Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Kenny Ken and it's the opposition view from an Arsenal fan point of view. What a week for Spurs, what a week for Spurs. You know, massive game against Man City last week. The first half, I thought Man City were just toying with Tottenham. It's like Spurs didn't want to be there. It was so easy, it became a bit of a practice match. You know, a couple of goals from, Shirky and Semenyo. But I always say, on observation, what I've seen with Spurs is that there's quite a few home games where Spurs have gone 2-0 down. In the second half, they come out like a whirlwind, and that was no different. You know, a couple of goals from Solanke. I think he's quietly come back in a bit of form. You know, me worried about North London derby because, you know, you've got a striker in form. However, maybe the first goal might have been offside. So not offside, it might have been a foul, but it doesn't really matter. The fact is Spurs came back really, really strong in that game. And now they've got another massive game at Old Trafford tomorrow, and that's absolutely big for Tottenham. You know, Man United have won their first 3 games under Michael Carrick. Yes, I know, they beat us as well as Man City and Fulham, and they're well worth their victories. But it's a glamour tie for you guys, Man United and Tottenham. You think about the games in the 60s between you both. You know, Charlton and Best against Jennings and Greaves, and, you know, Smith. So those are massive, massive games. However, I want to touch on Cristiano Romero. You know, his comments about the board and, you know, the lack of ambition. Word of warning about players like that. Some of you fans might see him as a hero at Spurs, but I've got 3 words to say to you whenever a player does that. Robbing Van Persie. We had a similar situation at Arsenal with Van Persie, saying the same things about, I want the club to match my ambition, which is Cristiano Romero is saying at this moment of time. And then what happened? We didn't match his ambition, and I used those terms very loosely, and I used them in jest because it was pure bullshit what he's coming out with. And guess what? Guess where he ended up? You guessed it, at Man United. Now, I'm not doubting Cristiano Romero for any time. I don't know the fella. You know, he's your captain, but I always have been and will ever be suspicious of players like that. Match my ambition. No, mate. I will say to Cristiano Romero, keep quiet, get on with the season. You're still in the Champions League. You've still got some big games. You don't know where you're going to finish. You know, for some reason that you found yourself in a relegation fight and you shouldn't be there. So my advice to Cristiano Romero is belt up and play the game.